Today, we're going to go back in time. Way back. We're diving into a war that ripped the ancient world apart over 2,400 years ago. And our guide? Well, he's the man who basically invented political history itself.
Right from the start, Thucydides knew he was living through something absolutely monumental. This wasn't some reflection written centuries later. This was him, in the moment, feeling the ground shake and deciding he had to document it for everyone for all time.
So, who was this guy Thucydides? Well, he wasn't some scholar tucked away in a dusty library. No, he was an Athenian general who actually fought in the war. He was an eyewitness. And then, after a military blunder, he was exiled. Now, you'd think that would be the end of it, but his exile gave him this incredible, unique chance to travel and talk to people on both sides of the fight. It's what makes his account so powerful.
Okay, so let's get into the conflict itself. We're talking about the Peloponnesian War. This was a massive, decades-long struggle that pitted the two great superpowers of ancient Greece against each other, along with all their allies. Let's take a look at who they were.
On one side, you have Athens, a booming, innovative naval empire, fueled by trade and known for its wild experiment with democracy. And on the other side, Sparta, also known as Lacedaemon. They were the complete opposite. A rigid, militaristic society, totally dominant on land and ruled by a small elite, an oligarchy. So you've got the established old guard power in Sparta, watching this new, rising power in Athens. A classic setup for a showdown.
And that brings us to the million-dollar question. Why did they fight? I mean, leaders always have their official reasons, right? Broken treaties, arguments over allies, that sort of thing. But Thucydides was really the first historian to just push all that aside and ask, okay, but what's the real reason?
And what he found was profound. He argued that all those official complaints were just noise, just symptoms. The real cause, the one that made war pretty much unavoidable, was a single, deeply human emotion: fear.
This quote right here is the heart of his entire book. He's saying the real reason, the one nobody wanted to talk about, was that Sparta, the established power, saw Athens growing richer, stronger, and more influential, and it terrified them. That alarm, that fear of being replaced, is what pushed everyone over the brink.
This insight is so timeless it actually has its own name today, the Thucydides trap. You hear this term all the time in international relations. It describes this exact dynamic, that incredibly dangerous moment when a rising nation challenges a ruling one. It's a straight line from ancient Greece right to the geopolitical headlines of our own time.
But the enemy wasn't just Spartan soldiers outside the city walls. In the second year of the war, a far more terrifying threat emerged from inside Athens. And this is where Thucydides shifts gears, going from political analyst to almost a medical examiner, giving us a chilling, first-hand account of the disaster.
I mean, think about it. Athens was basically a fortress. Its famous long walls connected the city to its port, meaning it could never be starved out. Its navy was unbeatable. The Spartans could burn all the farms they wanted, but they couldn't touch the heart of the empire. So what could? Well, the answer was a disease that no wall, no army, no ship could ever stop.
What's so amazing is how Thucydides describes it. He's not being poetic, he's being clinical, almost like a modern doctor. He just lists the symptoms with this cold precision. The fevers, the inflamed eyes, the throat and tongue turning bloody, the horrible breath, the coughing, the violent retching. It's just horrifying. And it only got worse. He talks about the body breaking out in sores, and internal burning so intense people couldn't stand to wear clothes. Many just threw themselves into water cisterns, driven mad by a thirst that nothing could quench. And if you survived, some people lost their fingers and toes, or their sight. And others suffered a total memory wipe. They couldn't recognize themselves or their loved ones. Just unbelievable.
But maybe the most devastating blow wasn't physical, it was social. The plague absolutely shattered Athenian society. With death so random and so certain, people just stopped caring. Religious ceremonies, laws, social norms, they all went out the window. People just lived for the moment, figuring they'd be dead by tomorrow anyway. It was a complete breakdown of civilization itself.
And this internal collapse of morality, it was happening on the outside too. As this long, brutal war dragged on, year after year, Thucydides carefully showed how all the old rules, the unspoken conventions of war, were just eroded, one atrocity at a time.
You can literally watch the moral decay happen in stages. Early on, the Spartans shock everybody by executing all captures taken at sea, even from neutral ships. But pretty soon, Athens is doing the same kind of thing, killing ambassadors without a trial.
By the late war, in the famous Million Dialogue, the Athenians basically tell a small, neutral island that the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must. The gloves were completely off. Thucydides also had this incredibly sharp, almost cynical eye for political spin. He noticed that when countries do something wrong, they don't just admit it. No, they come up with these long, complicated justifications, using a wealth of language, as he puts it, to hide the ugly truth. Sound familiar?
So the cause of war, the horror of a plague, the decay of morality. Why are we still studying this text 2,400 years later? Why is this book still required reading at military colleges and in foreign policy programs all over the world?
Well, it's because the lessons are just timeless. First, the Thucydides trap is this crucial warning about how dangerous power shifts can be. Second, his account of the plague shows how a crisis can strip away the thin veneer of civilization. Third, he lays out that eternal struggle between a nation's self-interest and any concept of justice. And finally, his whole method, his focus on evidence, on objectivity, on finding the true causes, that's the foundation of modern history and political science.
You see, he didn't write his history just to tell an old story. He called it a possession for all time, because he believed that since human nature never changes, these patterns of power, fear, and conflict would just keep repeating. So the question he leaves for us is, when you look at our world today, have we learned?